And it is another beautiful week here as we are advancing toward Christmas Day. And all sorts of wonderful experiences are coming up. So, the exchanging of presents and all of the different uh, associated things like the meals and the warmth and the stopping the world for a brief moment and being able to actually experience life through the eyes of Jesus. So we're going to be looking at Christmas as the Course in Miracles presents it to us. How are you this morning, Barrett?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. As your phone rang, I thought every time a phone rings, an angel gets its wings. So I don't
Mm.
know if that's how it really goes, but
Well, I've gotten to the point where all this fragmentation really doesn't have a lot of appeal for me anymore. So I've kind of discarded the idea of angels and just, this is just God. Wherever I go, this is God. I don't have to embellish it with some kind of a distinction. It's
Mhm.
just wherever you step, you are stepping into God. There is
Mm.
no spot where God is not.
I like that. I like that a lot. So yeah, I'm doing really good. Definitely in the holiday season spirit. I think tomorrow night I'm gonna go see the zoo lights at Lincoln Park Zoo with Edith. So looking forward to that too. And yeah, just a very festive attitude in the air, and definitely enjoying this time of year and all the opportunities to join with people that it provides.
And this time of year, I always think of Krishna Das and his one song, Jesus is on the main line.
Mm.
And the lyrics to that song, it's Jesus is on the main line. You can call him up and tell him what you want.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just been getting this image the last few days of um, Jesus as like a builder, like a builder, general contractor kind of person, and that sometimes I'm trying to build, a house or whatever on my own, and it's like, no, don't try to build a house on your own. You've got Jesus here. He knows what he's doing. Just let him tell you what needs to be done and let him take care of the rest. And I'm like, oh, that's a better idea.
Yep, he's on the main line. Just call him up. He's always available. There's no waiting when you start moving in the Jesus direction. He is multitasking 7.5 billion tasks and growing. So, but all growing back to one. Isn't that the enigma of the whole thing?
That's right. That's right. It's the puzzle. It seems to be going in so many directions, but it's actually leading back to no directions because there's just home. So,
Right, exactly. We will arise. So I'm going to start off here with the second paragraph of the introduction to the idea of Christmas. And it says, the sign of Christmas is a star, a light in darkness. See it not outside yourself, but shining in the heaven within. And accept it as a sign the time of Christ has come. He comes demanding nothing. No sacrifice of any kind, of any one, is asked by him. In his presence, the whole idea of sacrifice loses all meaning. And I really love the way that, he uh, redirects our thinking because we are so invested in sensuality and our physical senses. And so we're always looking outside for the star, going out into the, wilderness at night and looking up. And it's an unnatural thing for us to look within. And yet here he is pushing us in that direction over and over again.
sometimes we need a little push. So,
Or a shove. And it's like the old saying, a nod is as good as a wink to a blind horse.
That is really good. It's sort of like the idea also you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? Here Jesus is in, 1,300 plus pages of wisdom. He's leading us to the water and he's encouraging us to take a drink, but sometimes we do and sometimes we don't, right?
Yeah, it's if he were, if Jesus actually had an ego identity that he was attached to, he would be the most frustrated soul in the universe.
Well, it's a good thing he's past the ego because, yeah, that infinite patience, right? That's what he's modeling, and he's really trying to get us to model as well. And sometimes the holidays is actually a good practicing ground for that idea of infinite patience, right? Because often things get busier. We have more to do, more on our plates. Everyone's kind of go, go, go. And even though there can be an attitude of sort of graciousness and gentleness, there can sometimes be an attitude of like, I gotta, 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 gotta. And it sort of is a good place for us to bring this idea, can I find myself being peaceful in this moment rather than tense? Can I find myself being joyful rather than triggered and having my buttons pushed all the time? And it's not to say deny your feelings or deny what you're experiencing, but maybe there's a different choice you could be making here. And to practice that really does lead us into more and more of that inner peace. And I think as this section talks about letting the Christ not be an external thing, but letting the Christ be the internal truth of what we are that reveals itself in our interactions with families, with friends, with strangers even. I sometimes think, being in the checkout line at a store is one really great time to practice gentleness, because these people are often kind of frazzled. They see person after person after person. Sometimes the lines are really long and people come to them always grumpy and upset. So to bring a little light into that circumstance, it almost always is very gratefully received. And really, why not, right? Why not give as we want to receive, and let that be our practice as we're doing this work.
And especially as we move through this holiday and the holiday around Easter, because these two cycles are when people get all revved up and they're always running behind time. They're always worried about this or worried about that. And for me, especially the last 2 months has been one of those passages where the Holy Spirit has said, okay, we're going to get to that final step here of surrender. You're just going to have to let go. And my life, in a lot of ways, has transformed because I am at a point where I don't want to take control. I don't want to be in charge. Once you arrive at that realization that every time you do something, it sets off a series of dominoes and you're never sure where you're going to end up. Whereas if you just turn it over in a state of surrender, you can know that the outcome is going to be the best possible outcome. So, and that's very timely as far as the holiday season, because if you get revved up and you're frantically trying to get things accomplished, all you're going to end up doing is just bogging yourself down more. And so really, I think this is a time of year where we have to reinstate our commitment to love, because love doesn't have any agenda other than love itself, which is the support of life itself. And that really is what Christmas is all about.
Yeah, exactly. And when we let these sort of fears or shadows sort of come into our presence and bog us down, we can just remember it doesn't have to be like that. Often it's an old pattern. And again, a lot of times these sort of family events, or like Christmas or the holiday gatherings, they often find us falling into old patterns that we're very familiar with, right? These are the people that we grew up with often, or or spent a lot of time with. And so we find ourselves going back into that way of being, even if we've kind of changed and been doing this work and we're not really the same person we once were. All of a sudden we get around as people at that kitchen table, and everything feels like, we're 12 years old again or something. So that's another opportunity to work on it, right? Can I come back into the present moment? Can I come back and can I take Jesus's hand while I'm sitting here eating the pie with everyone, and be in a place of happiness, rather than being aggrieved that Uncle Joe said that same awful thing he always says whenever we get together, or whatever it is. But these family ties often are a little stickier than other ties that we have to deal with. So we can really work on that. We can let this be our spiritual classroom, even as it is a gathering time, even as it is an opportunity for connection. So yeah, I think if we just remember that, it really helps, and it fits right in with this next paragraph in this section, where Jesus says, "This Christmas, give the Holy Spirit everything that would hurt you. Let yourself be healed completely, that you may join with him in healing. And let us celebrate our release together by releasing everyone with us." Right? So this is how the release happens, is that we release other people. When we forgive other people, we're really forgiving ourselves, because ultimately, as we've been talking about, there's only one of us. So whenever we're giving judgment to anyone else, we're actually judging ourselves. Whenever giving unkindness to anyone else, we're being unkind to ourselves. But conversely, whenever we're giving gentleness and love to someone else, we're giving those things to us as well. So as we really get this concept more and more and more, and it takes time, it takes practice, but as we keep working on it, we're like, man, I don't really ever want to be hateful or judgmental towards anyone ever again. Why? Because I don't want to be hateful or judgmental towards myself. And it just keeps coming back to this idea. And there's a reason why, again, we've done something like 170 of these sharings talking about these principles and just reiterating them, is because it takes practice and it takes repetition. And it takes these ideas going deeper and deeper and deeper into us for us to really live them, to really live from these principles. It's not enough just to get these ideas intellectually, right? After a certain amount of time, we can all do that. The real work in this is to live these principles every moment of our lives. And again, it's not necessarily easy, right? The Course very rarely says that it's easy, but it is fairly straightforward, right? Once we get these ideas, they're not complicated, right? The ego is complicated, but the Holy Spirit is really simple. The truth is simple. So it just takes perseverance, practice, and dedication. And I think all of us have that in us if we just sort of tap into it. And that's really kind of what we're doing here as we practice these ideas.
Absolutely. And continuing where you left off with this section, it says, "Leave nothing behind, for release is total. And when you have accepted it with me, you will give it with me." So we're actually invoking the presence of Jesus every time we forgive. That is in itself a mind-boggling concept, that you are not alone. You have such an incredibly intimate connection to Jesus that your every action that is aligned with truth is the invocation, the manifestation of the presence of Jesus. And I don't think many Christians actually arrive at that conclusion, because they always manage to see themselves as a distance apart. There's a wall or a canyon between you and Jesus, and there's a canyon between Jesus and God. And all of these different gaps are being closed as you're starting to enter into A Course in Miracles. You begin to seal off those spaces where you felt disconnected, and suddenly you are becoming the manifestation of that spirit, that soul that walked across the earth and was able to forgive the most grisly and horrible of all circumstances, which is again what we look at when we move 4 months forward into the era of Easter. But Christmas itself should be for everybody that rising of the star, that rising of light in the darkness of the illusion of separation. To continue here, it says, pain will be brought to us and disappear in our presence. And without pain, there can be no sacrifice. And without sacrifice, their love must be. And that's the other side of the equation. We're always talking about miracles. We put so much attention on the idea of the miracle, and yet every miracle has some form of healing connected to it. So, I think that as we move into 2019, I'm going to put a lot more attention on the idea of healing than I have in the past, simply because this is the time to see the miracles made manifest, to see that process of love resolving everything that creates pain for us in this physical world.
Yeah, and there's no pain that won't disappear when we bring it to the Christ, right? This doesn't mean that if you have some sort of physical issue going on and you do forgiveness, that the pain is going to instantly disappear. But it does mean that if, as you stick with this work, that ultimately all pain will disappear, right? And I don't know the time frame for everyone involved with this, but this is where the Course is leading us. This is why in Jesus's crucifixion, as you alluded to, that there was actually no pain for Jesus. There was actually no suffering at all. Why? Because an unhealed mind, the guiltless mind, cannot suffer. And Jesus had let go of all of his inner guilt, all the ego within him was completely released. And so there was no way that he could suffer at all. Even as his body was being killed, he knew the truth that he was immortal, that he was one with the Father, that he was not apart from God's love, and that his body being killed wasn't a real issue to him. And it's a pretty surprising thing, but that is the message of Course in Miracles, and it is the message that we're learning. We're talking more about the birth of Christ here around Christmas, but this is what the birth of Christ means, that when we live in that energy of Christ, that we are beyond fear, that we are beyond pain, that we are beyond suffering. And it's a radical idea. It's totally different than what the world offers us. But what we're getting is that what the world offers us, we're worthy of better than that. and we just start realizing that more and more. And ultimately, we all step into that light completely. And we step away from the fear. As the next paragraph starts, he says, "You who believe that sacrifice is love must learn that sacrifice is separation from love." So he's helping us to see we have it kind of backwards. For sacrifice brings guilt as surely as love brings peace. Guilt is the condition of sacrifice, as peace is the condition for the awareness of your relationship with God. Through guilt, you exclude your father and your brothers from yourself. But through peace, you invite them back, realizing that they are where your invitation bids them be. So it's really a matter of what are we valuing? What are we valuing as we go through our life? What are we valuing as we go through the world? What is it that we want to keep, increasing the importance of in our life? And what do we want to decrease the importance of? I think it can be easy in this Christmas season to kind of get wrapped up in, again, the sort of physicalities and the gifts and the specific instances of this is and that's that happen around the holiday, foods and things like that. And this is not to say don't enjoy those things. You definitely should. But what we do is what we do notice is different is that we don't place our salvation in those things. If the pie gets burnt in the oven, okay, well, we're still all together. We're still gathering and having a nice time together. if the present that you wanted to get for that person is sold out and you can't find it anywhere. You know, the peace that is within you doesn't have to be affected by that. So these sorts of things that happen around the holidays, they can actually be stepping stones towards realizing the peace never leaves us, rather than obstacles to knowing that peace, or things that get in the way. And it could be something more severe too that happens. But even that is still an opportunity for us to practice these ideas and to realize that, again, the Christ is here. The Christ is always here within us. It's just a matter of whether we're willing to see it. And a really good exercise to realize that more and more is to practice witnessing the Christ in everyone that you meet. As you go through your days, you go through this whole holiday season, if you can hold in your mind this idea of really seeing the Christ everywhere, or seeing the Christ in every person that you interact with, can you imagine how much that would transform your experience? Really kind of play with this and practice this and see how much you can do this, right? Do it the best you can, and don't feel bad if you forget, or you don't have people, or you have some people you don't want to do this with. That's okay, but just do the best you can, and you're probably going to find out that it leads to some really amazing things happening in your life. So I like to try to do that exercise every so often, and it's really powerful. It's really amazing.
Yeah, it truly can be. And, you know, in its own right, that is the holy instant that is often referred to in the book. You know, it says, we in section 7 down here, in the holy instant, the condition of love is met, for minds are joined without the body's interference. And where there is communication, there is peace. The Prince of Peace was born to reestablish the condition of love by teaching that communication remains unbroken, even if the body is destroyed, provided that you see not the body as a necessary means of communication. So I think one of the things that can be a stumbling block with the Course is the holy instant is mentioned over and over and over again. And people try to create a definition for it. And in truth, the holy instant is that moment when you actually forget about yourself. And in that occurrence, you bring forth the collective self. You bring forth Christ. So if we stop trying to attain the holy instant and merely live in the moment, the holy instant overwhelms us. It overtakes us. So if you're chasing the holy instant, I think that can probably slow down your progress. And you have to realize that the real journey here is a journey to love. And love is very, very fleeting when you bring in judgment. Love goes, back out into the freedom of the universe and abandons you seemingly for a moment or two. So just to be able to relax and allow love to flow into every association and every situation, that is going to create the holy instant for you in a very anticipated way. It's no longer a thing of guessing and hoping and trying to figure it out. The thing that happens is that love is restored where it naturally should always be. And that is what makes the instant holy.
Well, that's a beautiful idea. And I really do get this sense, that energy of the Christ child that symbolizes that light for all of us. It really, there is a sense I get when I hear the story of, the birth in the manger. It's beautiful. And I kind of get that feeling just here as we're talking about this. So.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, skipping down to section 8, it says, let no despair darken the joy of Christmas, not even burned pies. For the time of Christ is meaningless apart from joy. Let us join in celebrating peace by demanding no sacrifice of anyone. For so you offer me the love I offer you. And that brings us back once again to the realization that every time you connect with somebody, you are in fact connecting with Jesus. And if you are not able to see that yet, then you need to just relax more. You know, the whole thing is, again, the more we strive to see Jesus in those around us, the more it eludes us. But as soon as we're able to relax and allow the presence to present itself to us, then all of a sudden you're seeing Jesus at the train station and the bus stop and checkout line and Jewel and you know, Jesus is just all over the place. and it really becomes exciting. Like I said at the beginning of this, Krishna Das, when he talks about Jesus on the main line, he says you can call him up and tell him what you want, and he will come through for you. So this holiday, I think, is going to be an amazing one for a lot of people in proportion to their trying not to manage it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you can just let go and be swept away on this current of joy and the mystical experience of the life that you actually want coming into play, then you are going to have an amazing Christmas this year.
Well, I feel it, and I'm just, again, as always, so grateful for our time together today, and I really hope you have a beautiful Christmas too. I'm sure you will, and yeah, I'm looking forward to connecting again for the next one of these next week, as we kind of celebrate the post-Christmas energy and get ready to ring in the new year.
I think it's going to be lovely. And do we have anything going on as far as events, or are we just going to slide through Christmas and think about that as we hit 29?
Yeah, I think we'll share more about upcoming events, maybe in our next one or the one after. So yeah, sounds good.
Well, it's, you know, one of my favorite movies and Broadway plays is The Producers. So you'll be in Germany in springtime, and I always think it's springtime for Hitler.
Well, it does remind me, when you mentioned movies, that you and I and Devin, Reverend Devin Byrne, are going to be doing our next Movies at the Miracles after a bit of a break we've had. So that will be this Saturday for those who are interested in joining us while we talk about that. It'd be great to have you join us, which will be 11 a.m. Central Time. So, and it'll be available afterwards as a recording, as always, too. So.
Absolutely, and we're looking at Scrooged, one of my all-time favorite movies.
Yeah, great Bill Murray classic.
Right, and Ebert of Siskel and Ebert fame gave it only one measly star. And I gave it 5.
We won't listen to him.
Anyway, you're supposed to be off and running for your adventures for the day, so I will see you in 1 week.
All right, sounds good. Bye, man. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.